Hark! It's an 87th Precinct Christmas special episode. This is the only podcast in the world dedicated to Ed McBain's seminal series of police procedural novels, their spin-offs and other related things, such as today's topic, Barney Miller, and, in particular, the episode Christmas Story from Season 3. To look at the episode, I'm joined in my magical wintry grotto by Santa's two favourite elves, Mr. Morgan, in charge of sticking the wheels onto bright and shiny fire trucks Brown.
Hello.
And Mr. Stephen, lead tester of the voice box on creepy dollies that tell you they love you when you pull the string, Royston.
Hello.
Classic toys, both those things. My name is Paul Abbott, and I am Santa's increasingly larger helper. Christmas references.
Yeah.
That's what's happening there.
I see.
Just before we get going, I'll just sort of do a little summing up of the year, because this will be our Christmas episode, and looking back, as you do at this time of year, reflecting on the things that have gone before. We've put out 28 episodes of this podcast this year.
Crikey.
That's
28 in a year.
11 books we've done, and that means 11 bonus episodes as well. I've put out 2 little mini solo episodes, and I've done 4 bonus episodes, if you count this one as well.
Blimey.
And so that's quite good, isn't it? There you go.
Prolific.
Been working hard. We've been hardly working.
I know, yeah.
All McBain all of the time, except when it's about something else. We have just watched this episode of Barney Miller, and the reason for this is because people kept saying to me, oh, Hill Street Blues, yeah, I can see how that's influenced by / ripped off the 87th Precinct, but people kept saying I thought Barney Miller was as well, and I'd never heard of Barney Miller, and so we've talked about it a couple of times in passing, but today we've watched an episode, and so I've watched a couple of episodes before this, but for you two it was the first time, wasn't it?
It was,
indeed,
yeah.
What better than a Christmas episode? Conveniently, it also is an episode that was broadcast in December of 1976, so in relation to the books we've been looking at, so we've just done So Long As You Both Shall Live, that was released in 1976. The next one we'll be looking at is Long Time No See, 1977. So this episode of TV sits nicely at the end of the year in which the last book we looked at came out. Mm-hmm. So there's your McBain context for that. Mm-hmm. Anyway. And it was just called Christmas Story, Season 3 of Barney Miller, Episode 10, broadcast on the 23rd of December, 1976. How did you find Barney Miller just in general, then, having watched half an hour of it?
It was quite enjoyable, actually, yeah.
Yeah, did enjoy it. Had a few good, solid chuckles to it. Some of the writing, I think, still stands up pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
It didn't seem particularly dated, did it?
Yeah, when someone says sitcom from 1976, you're normally kind of on your guard because you just think, oh, this is not going to be funny anymore. But no, I did enjoy it.
Yeah, nice ensemble comedy.
Absolutely.
That would have been before Hill Street Blues, then, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, there's a tradition of cop comedies, like one called Car 54, Where Are You, was quite well known. So there'd always been sort of cop comedies, because they are an ensemble thing and they tend to be set in particular situations, so it works quite well, I think, as a setup.
Yep.
In the same way that it does for the actual cop stories and things like Hill Street Blues and the McBain books as well.
Was the other one you watched all filmed in the squad room as well?
Yeah.
Entirely.
So I think
the
impression I get is that it is a studio sitcom set in the squad room of the 12th Precinct in New York, which is where Barney Miller's the captain. But I think once a season or something, they do like an external one where they're out on the streets or something like that, which I've never seen any of those ones. But yeah, I think it's very studio bound.
Yeah.
Nice and cheap to make, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
Once you've got the setup and running. Yeah, so that episode that we watched was directed by a chap called Bruce Bilson. Heck of a pedigree. Did lots of episodes of the TV series Get Smart. The TV series of The Odd Couple, featuring Jack Klugman.
Oh, indeed.
Are you going to find a Columbo link here?
I couldn't.
That's what I'm sensing.
No.
I can smell it in the air.
Unless you can extract a Columbo link from the TV series Dinosaurs, which you might remember from the early 90s.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Dinosaurs?
It was like a sitcom, but with dinosaurs instead of people, is that right?
Yeah, basically it was like Roseanne, but they were all dinosaurs.
I remember this because I remember The Simpsons parodying it because like, oh, isn't it amazing how it's like a live action sitcom, but they I think some of the Simpsons writers rather felt like dinosaurs had just pinched the idea of the Simpsons but turned it into dinosaurs.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of it.
How could you miss it? It was a huge phenomenon at the time because it had a hilarious baby dinosaur in it that would say its catchphrase, "Not the mama," a lot in an annoying voice.
I never saw it, but I remember it existing.
No, I think it passed me by.
Well, you can go back and look it up. But yeah, the man who directed this episode of Barney Miller directed quite a few episodes of Dinosaurs, a few episodes of Hawaii Five-0, a few episodes of The Doris Day Show.
Fantastic.
And he directed quite a lot of the series version of Private Benjamin.
I did not know such a thing existed.
No,
Which came first?
Well, I think Private Benjamin, the series, definitely came after the film.
Oh, right, okay.
And
Didn't star Goldie Hawn.
And probably didn't last tremendously long.
Well, I don't know. I've not gone in depth.
Well, mind you, I'd never heard of Barney Miller and it ran for 8 series, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been on British television, has it?
Barney Miller?
Yeah.
I think it was, but lots of things were that didn't make any big impact.
Not being repeated.
Yeah. So certainly not in a time when we would have stumbled across it, I don't think.
Never became like a Cheers that just goes round and round over and over again for decades.
That episode that we watched was written by 2 writers, Tony Sheehan and a chap with a fantastic name of Reinhold Weege.
Big fan of his work.
Yes.
His
name.
work.
His oeuvre.
What did Weege get up to?
Oh, I don't know.
Did you know anything about him?
I did a quick look, just wrote quite a lot of stuff. I think they basically got into TV production, a lot of these people. Writers, producers.
Yeah.
So a few little facts about Barney Miller. It ran from 1975 to 1982 on the ABC network. And the character of Detective Phil Fish, the old guy in it, had his own spin-off,
Oh, my Lord.
which lasted for 2 seasons, where it showed him at home with his wife, and they foster 5 children from different racial backgrounds.
Oh, right.
So it's a zany, looking after kids comedy that lasted 2 seasons after he retires from the 12th Precinct. So just... It's a bit weird when you have a spin-off like that, because at least it's a comedy spun off from a comedy, not like with Hill Street Blues, where the character of Detective Bunce has his own spin-off comedy show from Hill Street Blues.
So he's funny in the spin-off, but not in the main.
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
Weird, yeah.
That is peculiar. I do enjoy daft spin-off shows. They are always fun, if not necessarily watchable.
Yeah. Quite often, you get these very good, strong characters within their, the original, and then they're a bit, lose their charm, don't they?
Yeah, they put them in a different situation, and that character doesn't really work in that new situation necessarily.
Still think the best ridiculous spin-off show I've ever been introduced to was Baywatch Nights.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
It's a show that didn't know what it was when it started and kept changing.
Starts out as more of a kind of sort of sexy detective show, and then after that didn't work, someone cottoned onto the fact that X-Files was popular, and it suddenly becomes like some kind of supernatural investigation show.
Yeah. It's just such a ridiculous thing that they
Absolutely
persevered with it. Bring it back, I say. Everything else has been rebooted, or restarted up again. Bring back Baywatch Nights. There's still ghosts near the sea that need investigating.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
From by investigating by lifeguards who never sleep, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, they're the lifeguards, like working in the day, and then the same people are solving crimes.
Does a busy shift as a lifeguard, comes home, has his tea, straight back out to investigate the paranormal.
Wow.
Someone's been paid for that, for coming up with that
His
idea.
name was David Hasselhoff. No.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, this episode of Barney Miller Christmas Story, nice little story. It's not complicated, is it, particularly?
No.
Like you say, it's all set in one room. I suppose the question, actually, before we talk about it in the episode is, can you see why people are saying the 87th Precinct and Barney Miller might have something in common?
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like a show made up out of like the slightly lighter toned little vignettes from the Squadroom from an 87 Precinct book, doesn't it? Really, yeah. It's like you could just string 3 of those together and that would be an episode.
Definitely.
It's got that same sort of banter between the cops and everything, the same sort of these McBainish characters sort of appearing for various reasons. Yeah, I can totally see it.
Bad coffee joke in both.
Yeah,
which is can't be a coincidence, I wouldn't have thought.
I think it's interesting that you've got comedy dialogue. It's been written as a comedy sitcom episode, but actually you could lift it and put it into a McBain novel, and you wouldn't think it unrealistic.
Barney Miller Nights. Yeah.
Although it is definitely kind of light in tone, it could sit in a McBain book. It's still dealing with crimes. There's a detective interviewing a prostitute who's been mugged for her takings. There's a bit of commentary on the sort of decaying sort of streets of New York and the lowering of the tone of the neighborhoods. And,
yeah, definitely. That's something similar, isn't
something
it?
that's going on in the books that we're reading at the moment. And
The daft crimes as well. The guy lashing his returned gift through the department store window would be type of
that would absolutely
ridiculous.
happen in the 87 precinct. Yeah.
So you can well see that somebody's just read some of the 87th and thought, you know what, the things I really like about this is they're quite funny dialogue, funny characters. Let's just get rid of all the nasty bits.
Yeah, just cut out the murders
and stick it on the telly.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's amazing that I've not found anything where McBain talks about Barney Miller. I've looked, I've tried every sort of combination of searching. You can clearly find lots of him talking about Hill Street Blues because he was so annoyed with it, but apparently Barney Miller, he was either fine with it or it just passed him by completely.
Yeah, it seems unlikely it would have passed him by. Maybe he just liked it and thus wasn't annoyed by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or perhaps he had some dealings with it, who knows?
Because it is a mixed squad room like the 87th Precinct squad room. You've got Captain Barney Miller, is our Pete Burns, and he's the main character. You've got like an experienced cop in Detective Phil Fish, who's the older guy. You've got someone from, I think, a Polish background, which is Wojo, or Detective Stan Wojciech. I don't know how you pronounce that. I've never heard it said out loud. And it's got lots of letters in it. Wojciechowicz. Wojciech. Yeah, it must be about that. So they call him Wojo.
Yeah.
And he's a bit daft and a bit silly and a bit sort of naive, I suppose, that comes across. You've got Ron Harris, who's an African-American cop, very sharp dresser. You've got Detective Sergeant Nick Yemana, who's a Japanese cop, who's quite funny character. And then in the episode we watched, you had Inspector Frank Luger, who walks in, who's just clearly like what would be the equivalent would be Captain Frick, wouldn't it, in the 87th Precinct books. Just some doddering old guy in charge of things who just turns up occasionally, make a nuisance of himself.
Are there some other squad members who occasionally turn up too in some episodes from having a little glance there?
I believe so, yeah. But it's clearly down to the core cast for this Christmas episode here.
So, yeah.
I like it. I really enjoyed that episode. I thought it was good.
Yeah, it's cracking.
So, the story itself, we've got a handful of crimes, haven't we? So, the big crime that's going on outside of the precinct, where the cops have to keep going out to look into, is someone's trying to knock off department store Santas, basically, and stealing their stuff. So that's all going on in the background. You've got the crime of the guy who's bought a, what did they call it, a Zuma go-round or something?
That's something very much like that, yeah.
From a department store. He can't put it together and it's driven him to insanity and he's thrown it through the department store window.
Because they wouldn't open the doors to return it, even though he could see them inside.
Yeah, that was a good line. I could see them inside, but they wouldn't let me in.
He decapitated a mannequin. And you open with a lady who's been mugged, looking through, or giving details and then looking through sort of mug shots of people, and turns out that she's a prostitute as well. And a misunderstanding about that leads to a comedy scenario. Although that subplot is interesting because at the end it's supposed to... So this is the plot that involves our Japanese detective Nick Yemana, because the lady who's been mugged, the prostitute, is Japanese as well. And he doesn't know she's a prostitute. He asks her on a date, and at the end she turns up and they go on a date together. Now, I think it's portrayed as being very funny, and it falls in his favour because they're all sort of saying, sort of warning him a bit, so he knows, and he's a bit like, oh, should I? I think you would have concerns as a cop, even once you've knocked off for the day. In fact, it's in a sitcom, and it's like, and the cop goes out with a prostitute.
Yeah, that sort of odd bit at the end where he's like, well, I'm officially off duty now, and she's like, yeah, so am I now. Like,
We'll go, Christmas.
they're going out because they like each other, not because it's some kind of
Yeah, it was quite good the way it played in the story, but it's like so much of what happens in the 87th Precinct, where it's like, stop chatting up people who've come into the squadron because their father's been shot or whatever.
Yeah.
Can't help themselves. Perhaps it was an ongoing joke with him and his
maybe.
lack of success with ladies.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. Oh, and the other subplot is that they'd all agreed not to buy each other presents, but they all end up buying each other presents.
Yeah.
Much to Barney Miller's distress. Taking it at face value.
Oh, yeah.
But then he gave a great present in inviting the mad inspector around for Christmas Day.
He's been dropping some not at all subtle hints about how terribly lonely he's going to be on Christmas Day. I like the bit about heating up some fish sticks and polishing his pistol.
There's a joke in there about this. He's got a TV and he says the model of a TV, and it's one that was clearly a popular model in like the 1930s.
Yeah.
But no, definite parallels with the characters, I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
And the dynamic as well.
Without anyone being too directly of obviously
yeah.
a cipher for anyone in the 87th, there are certainly parallels. And
yeah, because you don't really have there's no older kind of cop in the 87th Precinct, is there?
There's no grizzled older detective.
And yet that's something that Barney Miller and Hill Street Blues have in common, the older sergeant in Hill Street Blues and the guys on the threshold of retirement. That's like a character totally missing from the 87th Precinct. I don't think there's ever...
you come across some cops in passing in the 87th Precinct who are referenced who are older now and again, but only as passing characters, never as a big part. Because I suppose in McBain world, if you put in an old character on the edge of retirement, you can't necessarily then have him in the next 40 books. And still at that thing. Or can you? I don't know.
Well, he subtly... we've talked about this before, haven't we? So he does subtly age them all, but it would be difficult to subtly age somebody who's about to retire, because you would have to retire him.
So I suppose he's the only archetype thing that's missing from the 87th Precinct, that type of cop.
Yeah, I would say so.
Portrayed as a bit of a curmudgeon, Detective Phil Fish.
In my brief bit of research earlier, he's actually younger than the guy who plays the Japanese cop.
Oh, right.
Who died only a few years after that episode.
Yeah,
and I believe there's an episode where they break character to talk about the guy who played Nick Yemana.
So I think the fish guy was perhaps only in his like 50s. So obviously he looks considerably older than that, I would say. But
yeah, I will watch more episodes, I think, to see how the dynamic plays out in sort of other stories.
Yeah,
there's, like you say, there isn't any particular individual parallel. There's no Steve Carella character who's almost, Carella's almost too good to be true a lot of the time, isn't he? And there's no horrible slobby cop, certainly in the stuff we've seen, like an Andy Parker, who you would just hate. Because he would be too much in a sitcom to do that, I think. And they sort of spread, I think what they do is they spread sort of those traits around a bit more, don't they?
That's right, yeah.
No Fat Ollie either.
Well, you never know. There might be a guest-type character who comes in every week, really bigoted, and then...
Yeah. Although Fat Ollie, with his later aspirations as an author, I believe, I've forgotten the character's name, the African-American character is also in this an aspiring author, so maybe there's some...
Yes.
Some parallels there, but that would go the other way, I guess, because McBain wouldn't have introduced Ollie's literary aspirations until some years after the later episodes of Barney Miller had aired.
Oh, yes, perhaps he was copying from Barney Miller.
Oh, blimey, it swings both ways, doesn't it? Yeah. So,
perhaps that's why he kept quiet about it.
Yeah, so I'm having that bit. I have seen another episode where Detective Ron Harris is writing a book about police work, and it's occupying his attention when he should actually be doing proper policing. Favourite moment from that episode? I think mine was when the blue Christmas tree turns up.
That's pretty great, yeah.
Yeah, the guy trying to get the contraption out of the squad room was quite... I think he was possibly my favourite incidental character.
Yeah, so this is the guy who's tried to throw this toy back through the department store window, or has thrown it back through the department store window, and can't put it together, and then while he's in the cage, Wojo puts it together for him. in an act of what you would think is, a lovely Christmassy moment, that even though they've had to arrest this guy because the department store wants to press charges, they've helped him out by saving his state of mind by building the toy for him.
And then he walks through the door.
Yeah.
He just looks so unbelievably crestfallen, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was a good actor, him. I liked him. Mr. Craig, played by Jay Gerber. And they get the mugger at the end as well, with a bit of a sting operation.
Oh yeah, Fish finally persuaded to dress up as Santa Claus, even though he's attempted to avoid it by hiding in the bathroom.
Yeah. Who out of the 87th Precinct would have ended up having that job of dressing up as a department store Santa?
I feel like it would have been Maya.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be Maya or possibly Andy Parker.
Oh, Andy Parker, yeah. Would have been the surliest Santa you could imagine, wouldn't he?
Yeah, because he would have taken great joy in arresting somebody at Christmas.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
But it would have been sort of insult to injury if Maya was made to do it, given that he's Jewish. So even though it says in the books that he has a sort of Christmas celebration at home with a tree and stuff like that, it perhaps would have been a double irony that he had to then dress as Santa or Father Christmas for his work. So it's just nice, isn't it? It's 25 minutes of, I wouldn't say banter, because it doesn't feel like banter, and I don't like the word banter particularly. Yeah. But it's, like you say, the jokes landed still, I thought, for the most part.
Still do, yeah. I'm sure if you were to watch an entire runs of it, some bits are going to have dated, but writing still seemed fairly fresh to me. It's, like really good, likeable, diverse cast. Yeah, very entertaining.
Yeah. And a good title sequence as well, with classic freeze frames on the characters.
Yeah,
as they smile to the camera and turn and whatever they're doing.
Yep.
Something like that.
While some very 70s bass rumbles on lugubriously in the background. Very nice. Like it.
Yeah, I wonder whether the credits ever evolved, like sometimes they do. Jazzed up the theme tune, maybe, in the later series.
Maybe there's even synthesizers on season 8, maybe. I'll have to dig into one of the later episodes and find out whether everyone's shooting lasers instead of revolvers and flying cars.
Certainly.
Yeah. Barney Miller 2000.
Landed on the Precinct in a helicopter or a hover car.
Hovercopter. I think the message there is it's a nice little Christmas episode of what turns out to be quite a good, funny show, and worth checking out.
Yeah, definitely a really good sort of companion to the 87th Precinct, I think, certainly.
Yep. I can understand why people were mentioning it to us now.
Yep.
So, to keep things ticking over, I thought we better just check in on the Christmas charts for the UK and the US in 1976.
All right,
well,
okay.
we certainly should.
What was number one in the UK in Christmas 1976?
Was it Boney M yet?
It wasn't
We're
Boney
a bit
M.
too early for Boney
Wizard?
M.
No.
ABBA?
ABBA are in the charts, but
is it one of the
it's a Christmas
famous...
song. It's not one that's lasted on, say, like the popular Christmas song things.
Shawaddy Waddy?
No.
No. I always wanted it to be Hey Mr. Christmas by Shawaddy Waddy, and it never is for some reason.
It's When a Child is Born by Johnny Mathis.
Johnny Mathis. Bloody hell.
Which is clearly a classic Christmas song, but it's not the pop type one, is it? It's
not so much.
So you don't hear that very much.
No. Can't see.
But I will tell you what else was in the chart. And number 5 in the chart was Portsmouth by Mike Oldfield.
Oh, right. Very nice.
Which is quite a little jig going on there. Not Christmassy though, is it particularly? But number 10 in the charts in the UK was a song called Bionic Santa.
Oh.
By
Chris Hill, who was a DJ. And I have never heard of this. I've never even heard hints of this person.
No, I don't know how that's not become a perennial Christmas favourite, really.
Well, it was his second number 10 hit, because he'd done a Christmas one the year before. And it's just like cut-ups of sounds from TV shows and films and from Parliament. And he sort of tells a story about Santa having to be rebuilt after having a crash. And it somehow goes through this thing where Margaret Thatcher and Jim Callaghan are fighting in the Commons, and it's just really, really weird.
Sounds absolutely insane.
It's not a song. It's a novelty record. So how it got to number 10...
Yeah, who on earth was buying that?
That was at a time when you had to sell a lot of records to get to number 10 as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Very odd.
But it's clearly not lasted in popular history.
Mythology.
I hope that there are some families who still treasure their copies of Bionic Santa and gather around the phonograph to play it every year.
Yeah. But it just goes to show for every big famous song, there's 8 billion lesser things that still somehow managed to get into the charts.
But sadly, for the authors of these things, not all of them become White Christmas.
No, quite. But the number one in the United States is Tonight's the Night by Rod Stewart.
Oh,
And there's no Christmas songs in the top 10 at all in America.
rubbish.
Just doesn't seem to be a tradition there from how we've looked at stuff over the past few years when it's cropped up.
No.
Don't know whether it becomes so. There's a bit of a thing over here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's... Well,
Don't know when it started.
Yeah, I don't know. The 70s was a big time for it, wasn't it? I mean, we've always had the odd one, but I think that sort of mid-70s era, there seemed to be a bit of a concentration of them.
yeah.
And then sort of onwards from there, really.
They were saying on the radio, whether this was true, that Noddy Holder one is like the second most played song in the world or something, or second highest royalty earner song in the world.
That's quite possible. I mean,
I
it's
wouldn't be at all
sort of a
surprised.
phenomenon unto itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely a reason why he just stays at home in his Scrooge McDuck style swimming pool full of money while the rest of them are out there still slogging around the cabaret circuit.
Did he write it? I
Yes.
suppose? Oh, right.
Yeah, he's definitely done very well out of it. But if you were settling down to the big Christmas film in 1976 on the BBC, you would be getting ready to watch Oliver,
Oh,
the big musical extravaganza.
aye.
But later that night, you might be watching the Morecambe and Wise show.
Oh, you might well.
And for our American listeners particularly, Morecambe and Wise sort of had no impact in the States whatsoever. They just didn't really work when they'd popped out there for a few bits and pieces. But they were huge in the UK, and by the 70s, they were like a double-act institution. And they had these big Christmas shows. And the guest stars on the 1976 show was Elton John, John Thor and Dennis Waterman. So that's a crime connection there.
Would they be pretending they'd be in character, wouldn't they? I bet.
Presumably, yeah.
I imagine so.
And people like Kate O'Mara, Marion Montgomery, and the Nolans. So
Brilliant.
it's an all-star cast there.
Yeah. But they'd have all had their Christmas, the two Ronnies would have done. And
It certainly would. But the Morecambe Wise ones particularly, they always crop up every Christmas. There's some kind of... I think it's the 1973 one possibly that crops up most often. But it's an essential part of Christmas viewing, isn't it? In the UK, really.
Yeah, it's woven into the whole fabric of the thing. Bless them. So, I asked for some questions from the internet world and our listeners and friends.
okay.
And I've got some silly ones, and I've got some not so silly ones. I have got one from Twitter from our friend George Solis, asking us what are the best Christmas-related stories written by Ed McBain. So what I can do is I can give you a rundown of the Christmas stuff he wrote. He wrote a short story called The Merry Merry Christmas in December 1957, published in Manhunt, and was later republished under the name The Very Merry Christmas in a couple of collections. He wrote a story called I Saw Mommy Killing Santa Claus,
Which sounds like the best, doesn't it?
It does.
So far.
which was made available through the Mysterious Bookshop in their Mysterious Bookshop at Christmas collection. There's obviously And All Through the House, which is the short 87th Precinct one, which was originally published in Playboy in 1984, and then in that lovely illustrated edition in 1994. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the 87th Precinct stories themselves, The Pusher ends on Christmas Day, basically with Corella in hospital. Sadie, When She Died, takes place over Christmas. Then there's Ghosts, Eight Black Horses, and Money, Money, Money are all set at the Christmas period. We haven't got to those ones yet.
No.
Oh.
And also the standalone book Downtown is set over Christmas as well. I mean, out of all of those ones, the ones I've read and ones that I've done so far, I think The Pusher's my favourite thing set at Christmas, because that could have been the end of the 87th Precinct.
Certainly could.
The first, it's the third one out of the first three commissioned, and you've got your main character
Dying on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very possibly. Yeah, the ones we've covered so far.
Eight Black Horses and Money, Money, Money. I think absolute corkers from my recollection of them. So,
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Some more festive treats to look forward to there.
And Ghosts as well.
And Ghosts as well,
Yeah. I would be very interested to see what Ghosts is like on a reread in this context, the way we're doing it now. But
yeah, that's true.
I don't think that would be my nomination anyway for best. The And All Through the House story is good as well. It's a lovely little that's a vignette of squad room life. That could be an episode of Barney Miller, couldn't it?
Yeah. It could.
So my nomination is The Pusher anyway, just because of its significance in the series.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Well, go with that. Definitely.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see one day if the original ending where he did kill off Corella. So that's the answer to those ones there. That's Run It Down. That's some of the suggestions, but that's the joy with the 87th Precinct of them being set in particular times. You can always go through and find the Halloween stories, the summer stories, the Thanksgiving stories, the Christmas stories, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Our friend Steve Morse has suggested this question. The publisher of the 87th Precinct books, which these days is Amazon essentially, comes to you and says that they want to revive interest with a large budget online or TV advert series. Pitch an idea to them. How would you sell the 87th Precinct now as a collection of stories? It's tricky, isn't it? Because you don't really get those sorts of campaigns for books.
No.
But crime and crime storytelling is huge.
Yeah, you've got to try and tap into the true crime wave at the moment. It's always been very popular, but I think certainly with Netflix now is like and the new Sky Crime is like mega TV money's being spent on it, isn't it?
So we want to be advertising on those sorts of channels, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So you try to relaunch the book series with a bang.
Yeah, so I think you'd have to try and tap into that market. The great appeal of those is like, a lot of the things might be quite famous, but you don't actually know kind of what happens. So maybe the whodunit aspect would be quite marketable, I suspect.
I don't know, would you push the sort of the darkness of the stories, or would you push the sort of squad side of it? That, there's a cast of characters. I think that's what I'd go for. I'd want to be getting across the idea that you've got a cast of characters that you're going to know and want to know what happens, and you're going to be with them, and they're going to take you through these amazing stories.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get it across.
I think pushing any sort of individual aspect of the types of stories, you'd run the risk of, selling the series short anyway, and also run the risk of someone picking up the wrong one and then going, well, that's not what it's like at all. If you did push the darkness of it, then there are certainly books that are going to have that, but then you might pick up one that's relatively sort of light-hearted and
you'd feel like you'd be missold, yeah.
Well, yeah. I've definitely seen ad campaigns for things that will do that.
Yeah.
And I could totally see a publisher trying to do that, just like, oh, well, really gritty, dark crime things are in, so let's push it as that, which, I don't think would fairly represent the series at all. I think it's that, but so much more as well.
I think, a lot of your mega-selling fiction now has repeating characters, so that's clearly popular.
Yeah.
So to tap into, he has 40-odd books, and they've essentially got a very steady cast.
Yeah,
then, you got something to get your teeth into.
You could do it as profiles. You could sort of have adverts that sort of like have suggestions of profiles. This is Steve Carella. He's a cop in this, in this city. Da 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 da. And you could have the deaf man as one of them, because you'd be a good selling point for, like, mega villain type thing.
You get your cast from our films or television series.
Yeah, well, there you go. It'd tie in nicely with the launch of our fantasy 87th Precinct TV series.
Yeah, just think. If you were promoting this on Amazon, maybe they could pick up the option on the series, and since they've already got the option on the books, if they're listening, I'm sure they are.
Yeah,
it seems daft that they haven't already been in touch, to be honest.
Well, I might have had some trouble getting presents for this Christmas delivered by Amazon this year, but I'm willing to take their many millions of dollars in order to produce an 87th Precinct TV series.
That is big of you and noble.
It's Christmas. It's the season of giving.
It's a magnanimous gesture.
I was just trying to think if I've ever actually seen an advert for a series of books on TV, and I don't think I have.
I don't think so. The only place I see adverts for books, apart from in specific literary supplements in newspapers or whatever, railway stations.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we could definitely come up with a series of railway station ads for these things.
Those types of places,
that's right, yeah. And, given the popularity of kind of a lot of Scandinavian kind of police procedural novels, maybe you could come up with something that would sort of lead people who are into that back to where some of that kind of genre's come from, possibly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm not sure exactly how you go about it.
Yeah.
You'd have to play up the sort of heritage of the series, really, wouldn't you, as well?
Yeah.
No, it'd be a very interesting thing to work on.
Sure would.
Whether you went sort of like focusing on characters or focusing on individual books or focusing... Yeah. So it's a good question, but I think the clear answer here is that we are not advertising executives.
Yeah.
So now we have a question from Ben Baker. Now, Ben Baker is a writer and he's a host of the Don't Let's Chart podcast with his friend Phil. It's a very good podcast. I like it very much. And he's got a question for us here. And the question is, what would be the ultimate gift for some of the characters in the 87th Precinct? And would it be a £10 voucher from Boots? So what would you get? What would you get the characters in the 87th Precinct?
Ooh.
What would you get Maya, for instance?
Oh, I don't know.
A hat?
Get Andy Parker.
A hat would be good.
Get Andy
actually,
Parker a
wouldn't
clean shirt, wouldn't you?
it? That would be a bad idea.
Get him a clean shirt.
You probably wouldn't appreciate it, but you could definitely use it.
Certainly a like a deodorant kind of set for Fat Ollie, maybe.
Yeah. So a Lynx shower gel and spray.
Yeah, one of those. Yeah, you could certainly use
Tusk
that.
or something like that.
Tusk, yeah. Yeah, so you could definitely get him some smellies, couldn't you?
Alf Miscolo, you'd get him some nice coffee.
Yeah.
Try and encourage him towards making coffee that tasted nice.
Get one of those expensive George Clooney advertising machines with the little thing you shove in. So
Space coffee.
yeah,
George Clooney's space coffee.
So it should become impossible to make a bad cup of coffee.
I'm sure he'd still find a way.
Mm-hmm.
Bert Kling, what would you get Bert Kling?
Oh, I don't know.
Other than a good talking to, which is what he needs half the time in these books as well, really. Yeah, self-help book, I think, probably is what Kling needs.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
very
don't know where you
true.
get Corella. Don't know.
Yeah,
Well, what does Corella
The man who's got everything,
Yeah,
isn't he?
absolutely.
yeah. He's got his nice house that he bought quite cheaply. He's got 2 kids. He's got a live-in nanny who doesn't want paying, essentially.
yeah.
He's got a beautiful wife, and everything's fine forever.
Nothing for him. He can buy us a present.
Yeah, definitely. And he's such a good cop, he never makes it past 2nd grade. It's just... yeah, but how to get ahead in policing. Who else have we got? Hal Willis. Get him some platform shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be good for him. I'm sure there was one of the ones I've read relatively recently where he's describing someone who's 5'9" as medium height, and poor Hal Willis, who's 5'8", is always described as being incredibly short. It's like, come on, be fair.
I think generally they'd all appreciate whatever you got them, except perhaps Andy Parker, who wouldn't understand why you were buying him a nice fresh shirt for him to wear.
No. He'd probably appreciate it more if you just brought him a 6-pack of beer, to be honest.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and I think Fat Ollie would have something to say about being given a toiletries gift set as well. Not necessarily the most self-aware, those characters, anyway.
Absolutely not. Maybe get Bob O'Brien some kind of good luck charm.
Yeah. A load of horseshoes. So you wouldn't know. It's just too hard, you know. It's not like Barney Miller where they all go and give each other gifts.
Yeah, you don't find out what any of them are, do you?
No, the only gift you know what it is when the inspector comes in and he's got a gift in his coat and he gets it out and it's clearly just it's a half of whiskey or something like that, half pint of whiskey, which Barney Miller thinks is being given to him, but no, it's for himself.
Although we found out what some of the gifts that Ron Harris brought in were, didn't we, from the gas station or wherever he'd been.
Yeah.
That was quite good. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has to do like a lucky dip around the room, so what comes out
Yeah,
of
they
that?
they weren't wrapped up, were they? Shaving set.
This is some kind of Mills and Boone type novel.
Oh, that had a good name, didn't it?
It did.
The Tree House of Desire or something like that.
So that's what Barney Miller gets off the drugstore shelf. Yeah, right. A pulp romance novel called Treehouse of Desire, which I'm sure would be brilliant. And so we've got a situation. We've got the cops of the 87th Precinct. They've handed each other presents. Parker's been offended. Ollie Weeks has turned up uninvited anyway.
Naturally.
It's Christmas Eve before they go home, a bit like Barney Miller. And the question from Gary Abbott, my brother, is... They're having a Christmas party at the 87th Precinct. What happens?
Well,
What would happen if they tried to socialise inside the squad room, actually getting drunk and hanging out as friends?
Yeah, they don't really do that ever, does he?
not much. I mean, we see them drinking together at things like Kling's wedding reception and the like, but not too much.
No.
I don't know. I'm sure Parker would just get drunk very quick and make a nuisance of himself.
Yeah.
Or pass out on his desk.
Pass out on his desk, most likely, yeah.
They'd just be telling stories, wouldn't they? They're like telling really bad jokes to one another for hours and hours.
There'd be a lot of that,
on
wouldn't there?
I suspect.
I'm sure Cotton Hawes would definitely cop off with someone within about 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He definitely would. Dick Gennaro wouldn't have a clue what was going on. He wouldn't even know what day it was, let alone why he was drinking in the squad room.
Yeah, he'd definitely embarrass himself horribly in some way, shape or form, wouldn't he?
It's certainly something that McBain never felt any need to incorporate into any of the stories.
No. Ollie Weeks would definitely turn up uninvited.
He certainly would.
As suggested. And
make the whole event awkward and unpleasant for everyone else without realising he was doing so.
But I think the simple answer to what would happen during a Christmas party at the 87th Precinct is some big crime would occur and it would interrupt the party.
Yeah.
Almost certainly, yes.
And they'd already have a cage full of drunks and muggers and things in the corner of the squad room anyway that they would be screaming across the room as they always are.
Interjecting entertainingly and demanding to use the turlet.
It's not a lucky place, the 87th Precinct. You wouldn't be there enjoying yourself for long before something went horribly wrong.
Nope.
So there you go. Anyway, well, there we go. We've had a little bit of a Christmas chat, a little Christmas episode there, because we'll be back in late January for the next main episode, once Stevo's returned from investigating South Africa and its various pubs and cricket grounds.
Indeed, yeah.
I'm going as far as Bruges, which I suspect won't be as warm. Going anywhere, Morgan?
Yoxall.
Oh, fair enough.
Exotic Yoxall.
Yeah. So, thank you very much to everyone for listening to this and carrying on listening to us talking about things. Thank you for everyone who contributes and who has sort of sent us questions or joined in with like the fantasy casting of the 87th Precinct. Don't forget it's Monaghan and Monroe next time.
Oh, yeah.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't
No.
Monaghan and Monroe. Don't listen to me. I'm an idiot.
It's the Stillies, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah.
So
Fats Donner and
Danny Gimp. Yeah. So stool pigeons next time. But yeah, everyone who contributes to that's brilliant. That really helps us out. And thank you very much for putting up with all our daft chat about British ephemera.
But I think we're about to go an entire episode without mentioning certain words, and I think we should leave it at that, actually.
It's a Christmas miracle.
That is the Christmas miracle.
Well, so I do hope everyone will continue to enjoy our McBain journey as we head towards the latter part of the 1970s and into the 1980s during the coming year and beyond. So I'm going to say a very merry goodbye.
Goodbye.
And fare thee well.
Well, 12 o'clock. Merry Christmas, Warren.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Very funny.